Hi, my name is Alan Smith, and in this webcast we're going to look at Azure Cognitive Services Content Moderator versus Quentin Tarantino. In order to find a good test video, I searched for Pulp Fiction F-bombs, and I found this video, Mother F-bombs Pulp Fiction. It's a 13-minute video, which contains all of the swear words from the Pulp Fiction film. Obviously, I'm not going to play the audio on this. So this video will be ideal for testing the capabilities of the content moderation service. I searched on Wikipedia for information about beep censoring, and they're specifying that the beep sound is usually a 1000 Hz tone. And they've provided a link to a sample of that tone, which is very useful. So I'm going to download that file, and I'll use that later on in the application when I attempt to beep out the bad language in that clip. The Content Moderator service currently processes text and not audio. So we'll need to get a text transcript of the video. The first thing I thought of doing was using the Azure Video Indexer service. This allows us to upload videos, and it will generate a transcript of the video. Unfortunately, there's a couple of problems with this method. When we view the transcript file, we can see that the timing information is defined for groups of about 5 to 10 words. So if I'm going to be beeping out explicit words, I really need timing information that's based on the actual words and not the groupings of words. Another restriction is in the legal terms for the Video Indexer service. You're not really allowed to upload copyright material, and I'm guessing that the Pulp Fiction clip would fall into that category. So I searched around for a way of being able to get captions where you get timings on the actual words. And it is actually possible to do that directly in YouTube. So I'm going to press F12 to open up the developer settings in Chrome. I'll monitor the network traffic and turn on the captions. You can see that one of these calls is going to the Time Text API on YouTube. So I'll click on that link and we can examine the response. You can see that the response does indeed contain offset timings for the individual words within the dialogue. So I copied that JSON document and created it as a file in Visual Studio. So being in JSON format, it should be fairly easy to query this and extract all of the timing information that we'll be needing. In order to bleep out the offensive words, I'm going to need to process the audio. So I used a website to download the video clip from YouTube. I separated off the audio into MP3 format, and then converted this into a WAV file, which makes it much easier to process in my console application. I also converted the 1 kHz beep sound into a WAV file. In the Azure portal, I've generated a Cognitive Services instance called AI Labs Content Moderator. And this is the instance that I'll be using for the content moderation in this demo. I'm running the instance on a free pricing tier, which means it throttles the number of transactions I can run. But the good thing is, I won't be incurring any costs within Azure. So let's look at the implementation in Visual Studio. I've put a breakpoint at the beginning of the main method, so we can step through the execution and examine the values of any variables. So let's debug this application. The transcript class is going to manage all of the interaction with the transcript JSON file. So I'll generate a new instance, and then I'll load up pulpfictionfbombs.json. This is very simple. I'm just using the newtonsoft.json, jobject.parse, and passing in the text from that file. And that will give me a JSON object containing all the information about the transcript. The next thing I'm going to do is to retrieve the text from the transcript, and this is going to be sent to the content moderation service. So I generate a new string list and then iterate through all of the events. For each event, if the event contains segments, we're going to iterate through the segments. Each segment will be an individual word, and the UTF-8 property contains the word, including the spaces, and each of these words will be appended to that string buffer. When the segment is complete, I'm adding that string to the list of strings, and then returning the list of strings. So I'll put a breakpoint on return, run to that breakpoint, and drop the text variable into the watch window. You can see that it contains 532 lines. Each line will be a line of dialogue from the movie. So obviously I'm not going to expand that collection, because that will show quite a bit of offensive language. The next thing we need to do is to get a list of the words that we're going to be beeping out of the audio. And this is where we're going to be leveraging the content moderator. The string list variable cusses will contain all of the offensive words that are going to be beeped out. So I'm going to generate a new instance of the content moderator client using the credentials for that Cognitive Services account. I'll then set the endpoint on that client. We'll then iterate through all of the lines of the script. There is a limitation that we can send on the size of the text to the content moderator service, and if I send the entire script, we'll exceed that limitation. So I'm using a string builder and appending lines from the transcript to that string builder until the length of that string will exceed 1,000 characters. I'm then calling the screen text async method on the content moderation service. I'll add a breakpoint and run to that breakpoint. So let's drop the results into the watch window and see what we've got. So it's detected that the language is English. The terms collection will contain a list of offensive terms. And in this first section of text, you can see that we got 23 of them. For each offensive term, I'm going to trim it, remove any apostrophes, and convert it to lowercase. And if that offensive word isn't contained in our list, we're going to add it. I was also doing a count on the number of times the offensive words were used. Obviously, I'm not going to show that. Because I'm using the free tier, which has throttling on the number of calls, I'm going to sleep for 1 second before making the next call. And once we've iterated through the entire transcript, we'll return the list of offensive words. And you can see that this collection contains 33 distinct words that we're going to be beeping out of the audio. The next thing we need to do is to get the timing information for where these offensive words have occurred within the audio. And I'll do this by calling the transcript.getBeeps method. I've defined a class called beep, which contains 2 properties: the start point of the beep and the duration of the beep in milliseconds. And the getBeeps method will process the transcript and return a list of these beep objects. If we look at the structure of the transcript, we can see that each event has a start time, and then each segment, which is a word, has an offset in milliseconds within that particular event. So I'm going to iterate through the events, and for each event, I'll set a variable for the start time of that event. I then iterate through the segments, and get the offset of each segment, and also the word for that segment, which is the UTF-8 property. I'm then going to iterate through all of the words that we're going to filter out. And if the word for that segment is contained within that collection of offensive words, we need to beep out that word. So I need the overall start time in milliseconds, which will be the start of the segment plus the offset in milliseconds. I'm using a default beep duration of 750 milliseconds. However, if it's possible to retrieve the offset of the next segment, we can set the duration to the difference between these 2 offsets, which would hopefully be the duration of that offensive word. Sometimes there's a long gap before the next word. So if that duration was greater than 750 milliseconds, I'm setting it to 750 milliseconds, so we don't get any really long beeps. Also, I found that during testing, sometimes the end of the word wasn't beeped out correctly, which still sounded fairly offensive. So I found that adding another 300 milliseconds would ensure that the full word got beeped out. So now we've got the timing information, we can add a new beep to the beeps collection. I'm going to comment out this line of code so you don't see all the offensive words displayed in the console. That was just for testing. So I'll print out the total number of beeps in the console, and we then need to process the audio and beep out the offensive words. So I've created a class called beeper. I'll initialize that and specify the 1 kHz WAV file that we're going to be using as our beep sound. I'm then calling the beep audio method, passing in the motherfbombs.pulpfiction.wav file and the collection of beeps that we've received from processing the transcript. This method is using a WAV file reader to read in the original audio from the clip. So I'm playing around with bytes buffers, and I basically iterate through the audio. If the total milliseconds is before the next beep starts, we can just copy the original audio. However, when we get to a region that needs to be beeped out, and generating a new WAV file reader on the beeper. And whilst we're in the region of the beep, we copy the audio from the beep file. So that's replacing the original audio. Once we've reached the end of the beeps collection, we'll copy the remainder of the audio and flush the buffer. So let's complete the execution and produce that beeped audio file. You can see that it's detected 202 beeps, and it's displaying a dot every time a beep is removed. So hopefully this is going to give us a much cleaner version of the audio from that Pulp Fiction clip. So we can see the new file here, motherfbombspulpfiction.wav.beeps.wav. The next thing we need to do is to replace the audio in the video clip. And to do that, I'm going to be using Camtasia. I use Camtasia for all of my YouTube videos and also the Pluralsight courses that I do. It's a great tool for video editing. So first, we need to import some media. And I'm going to import the beeped audio track and the original video track. So I'll drop the original video onto the timeline. I can then separate the audio and the video from this track and remove the original audio. I'll replace the audio with a beeped version. Now when I played this through, it wasn't 100% successful. However, the problem wasn't related to the content moderator service. It was due to the YouTube transcript not correctly picking up on all of the words. In some sections of the movie, there was a lot of background noise, so the YouTube transcript was not 100% accurate. And this means the beeping out of offensive words wasn't 100% accurate. However, there were some sections with clear dialogue, where we did get a very accurate transcript. It's the scene from Jimmy's house, starring Harvey Keitel, John Travolta, Samuel L. Jackson, and Quentin Tarantino. So let's see if the Azure Content Moderator service can handle Quentin Tarantino.
I want to help you, but I don't want to lose my wife doing it, all right?
Jimmy, she ain't gonna leave.
Don't me, Jules, okay? Don't me. There's nothing that you're gonna say that's gonna make me forget that I love my wife, is there? And then get the my house before she gets here.
Hey, that's cool in the gang. You know, we don't want
You don't right now. Because big time if Bonnie comes home.
No, she'll freak.
I don't want to hear about I'm on
I'm on. You feel better?
All right, that gives us 40 minutes to get to Dodge.
Hey, man, as far as I know, up top.
So, pretty please, with sugar on top. Clean car.
This is puzzling face with had to pick up itty-bitty pieces of skull on account of your
I'm right now in my race car, right? And you got me in a red. And I'm just saying that it's dangerous to have a race car and that's all.
Well, I'm a mushroom cloud fucker. In fact, what I doing in the back? You be on brain detail. I'm washing the windows and you picking up
The final thing we need to do is to produce the completed video. So I'll select Produce in Camtasia and render the video as an MP4 file. This should take about 10 minutes. So here we can see that we've got the completed beeped out video. I won't play the audio on this, because I mentioned it wasn't 100% accurate. So the Azure Content Moderator versus Quentin Tarantino is a fun example of how we can leverage the Azure Content Moderator service. And in future webcasts, I'll be looking at other creative demos on how we can leverage the Azure Cognitive Services. If you have any ideas, please list them in the comments. And pretty please, with flowers on, click the subscribe button. My name's Alan Smith and I work as a developer, trainer, mentor and evangelist. I'm an Azure MVP and I speak at many international conferences. I specialise in delivering classroom and on-site training in the Microsoft Azure and AI technologies. I also deliver remote training and mentoring. I host seminars and workshops for companies. I've authored a number of Pluralsight courses and I also speak at conferences. If you're interested in any of the above, feel free to contact me on cloudcast.net@gmail.com.